Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here, and today we'll be trying to build and eat whole pizzas, running up the highest bill possible. You'll do so by playing cards from your hand and from cards on the table in front of you, but you'll also be using monsters to steal pizza from other players. Blobby's Pizza is a strategic pizza eating contest between cute monsters that teaches fractions, decimals, and percentages. It's for 2 to 6 players, takes 30 to 40 minutes to play, for ages 9 and up, and published by Semper Smart Games. Today, we'll be doing a rule school where I'll teach you how to set up and play the game so that you don't have to read the rulebook yourself. Now, I've placed timestamps below me in the description of this video just in case you want to jump to a specific section of the rules. Without further ado, let's get started. Blobby's Pizza is a card game for 2 to 6 players where you're trying to eat your way to victory by creating whole pizzas out of pizza fraction cards, like 6 12s, 3 12s, 2 12s, and a 12 is one full veggie pizza. You're trying to run up the highest bill by eating all these different pizzas and getting a certain amount of monster units for them and having the biggest bill in the end. Not only will you be making pizzas from cards in your hand, you'll also be placing cards in front of you onto your table that you can use to make pizzas as well. But you have to be careful because other players might be playing a monster card which eats other players' pizzas, and they can steal these cards from players. And different monsters eat different fractions of pizzas. So players are trying to manage their hand of cards as well as the risk management of the cards on their table, risking them being stolen, trying to create and eat whole pizzas. To set up, you're first going to find the green-backed tax and tip cards. You're going to take all of these and place them back in the box. You will not need these cards in your first game. Next, you're going to go through the red-backed cards and you're going to look for the single and only Chef Blobby card that looks like this. You're going to put it to the side just for now. Unless you're playing with 2 players, you can actually remove it from the game. We'll tell you what to do with this if you're playing with 3 or more players in just a moment. Now next, you're going to want to shuffle all those red-backed cards, and for the best experience, you're going to want to make sure they're shuffled really well. So before you even start shuffling it, it's best to sometimes just mix them up all over the table before you even start shuffling them as normal. Once you're done shuffling the deck really well, you're going to deal 5 cards face down to each player. When you receive these cards, you can pick them up and put them in your hand. You can look at them, but keep them secret from other players. These cards are known as your plates. Once you finish dealing out all the cards, you're going to find that Chef Blobby card that you put aside earlier, assuming you're playing with 3 or more players. You're going to take the rest of the red back deck and split it into halves. So that deck is split into half. You're going to take this Chef Blobby card and you're going to put it face down and you're going to place it on one of the decks. You're going to take the other half and place it on top. This makes Chef Blobby be face down about halfway through the entire deck. Now this deck is known as the kitchen and it's going to be placed in the middle of the table area where everyone can reach it. The object of the game is to earn the highest bill at the end, and you'll do so by creating whole pizzas and eating them, and each of them are going to cost a certain amount of monster units, and at the end, your total monster units is your total check. Whoever has the highest is going to win. Now there's different types of pizzas in the game. For example, supreme, veggie, cheese, and pepperoni. And this is how you'll be building these different pizzas. So let's talk about these cards in more detail. If you look at the picture of the pizza, all pizzas are 12 total slices, but each of these cards are going to be a fraction of the whole pizza. For example, this one here is 10 slices, and you'll see that there are actually 10 colored in slices, leaving 2 uncolored, because it's 10 slices. This represents 10 out of the 12 slices, or 10 12ths. This could be reduced to a fraction of 5/6, which also equals this decimal amount. And for the Supreme card here, we have 2 of the 12 slices, so between the 10 12 and the 2 12ths, that's a total of 12 12, which is one whole pizza. Now this is a fraction game, so the different fraction cards are color-coded. So even though you need cards of the same pizza type to make a whole pizza, like in this case the Supreme, the different fraction cards can include different colored cards. The reasoning behind the coloring of these is important, but I'll cover this later when I teach you about the monster cards. Same for the veggie down here. We have a 9 12ths and a 3 12ths, so between these 2 cards, it's a whole pizza. Between the cheese, we have a 5 12ths and a 4/12. That's a total of 9/12. We have 3 cards that are 1/12. So all of these cards make 12 out of 12, or a whole cheese pizza. And with pepperoni here, we have 2 of them that are 6/12. So both of these together equal 1 whole pizza because each of them is half a pizza. Also notice that the cards that have colored backs are reducible fractions, meaning this one goes from 4/12 can be reduced to 1/3, where the gray cards are irreducible fractions. They just show the same fraction twice and then the decimal amount. Now we'll talk about how you go about building those pizzas in just a moment. Now the game is played over multiple rounds. Players are going to be taking turns in clockwise order, starting with the player who most recently ate pizza. If it's a tie for that, then the youngest player will go first. At the beginning of your turn, you'll always have 5 cards in your hand. You'll always start your turn by drawing a card off the deck. That means you'll have 6 cards in your hand at this point. Now remember, what you're trying to do is make whole pizzas of the same type. So let's say I had a veggie with 4/12 and a veggie of 8/12. This is 1 whole pizza. Let's say I played both of these cards down. This is a whole veggie pizza. This is going to get me those monster units, which is essentially points at the end of the game. When you make pizzas, you're going to essentially put them off to the side, face down in stacks of the pizzas that you've made. Now you can make multiple pizzas on your turn, but when you're done making 1 or more pizzas, that ends your turn, and you'll do so by drawing cards from the top of the deck to ensure that you have 5 cards in your hand at the end, and the amount of cards you'll draw will depend on how many cards you spent when you had made those pizzas. Now at the end of your turn, remember it's the next player's turn clockwise. However, on your turn, remember you actually draw a card at the beginning, so you have 6 cards. And maybe you don't have the ability to make a pizza. There is a space in front of you called your table. Now you can freely move cards from your hand to your table, and remembering that you always end your turn with 5 cards. So I could have placed this veggie here. Now you need to be careful what you place here because other players can possibly steal these. We'll show you that in just a moment. So sometimes you might just be placing to your table. Other times you might be replacing, meaning putting one down and picking one up. Sometimes you might, in addition, will be placing another card down. So in this case, maybe I replaced one and I placed one down, remembering that you're going to have 5 cards in your hand at the end of your turn. Now anytime you place a type of pizza on your table, you're going to stack them up to keep things a little bit neater. So for example, if we have pepperoni slices, you can place them like this, but everyone needs to be able to see which cards are there, and there's never a limit as to how many cards you can have on your table. Now remember, you're always starting and ending your turn with 5 cards in your hand. And remember, the first thing you always do is draw a card so that you have 6 cards in your hand, and you're trying to make those pizzas. Now remember, you're only drawing cards at the end of your turn if you've made pizzas, and only after you've made all of your pizzas. However, let's say we made a pizza. Before we draw back up to 5, if we wanted to, we could place some cards on the table. Again, remembering that you're going to want to be careful because these can be stolen, which we'll show you in just a moment. But this gives you the availability to place cards that you don't want to use on your table to be able to draw up to 5 into your hand. And again, it's going to depend on how many cards you use to make your pizzas. So now let's talk about stealing pizzas from players' tables. On your turn, after drawing your single card from the kitchen, you can play, at most, 1 monster card. And if you do so, you're going to place it in what's called the monster row, just below the kitchen deck. Now let's look at this card. This is a monster, and it eats up to 1/4 of a pizza. Now again, this card is usually in the monster row, but I've placed it here so it's easy to see what you can do with it. Now it can eat up to 1/4 pizza. Notice that this card is an orange back. So is this one. That's to quickly show you that this card is also 1/4 of a pizza. So using this monster, you could take this card from any player's table because it's exactly 1/4. As shown here, all 7 unique monsters are color-coded like this to show which pizza slice fraction cards they can eat. For example, the red monster Pepperoni can eat any pizza slice fraction card with the same coloring of red, which also represents 1/6 of a pizza. Also, you can see it doesn't matter which pizza type it is, veggie, pepperoni, cheese, or supreme, and this goes for all 7 unique monster types and their corresponding pizza fraction cards. These colors also represent the 7 reducible fractions within a 12-piece pizza, but you aren't limited to only eating a single pizza fraction card that matches the monster. Now you can eat less than this. Let's say I just wanted to eat this 1/12 of pepperoni. That's great. You could steal it from one player, you take it from their table and place it onto your table in front of you. Now you can eat pizzas from different players. You could take a 1/12 pepperoni from one player and then take another card from a different player, as long as you don't eat more than a total of a quarter of a pizza, and it doesn't matter which pizza types they are. And for another example, this monster could have eaten these two and stolen these two from this player. So this was 2 12ths and 1 12th, that's 3 12ths, which of course is 1/4. Now when using monsters to steal pizzas, the cards you've stolen can go either on your table, in your hand, or they can even be used to create whole pizzas that turn. Now, as players are playing monster cards, they're going in this monster row. If a card is played and that monster already exists in the monster row, you simply just play it right on top of it and stack it just like this. This is allowing you to see how many of the unique monsters have been played. Now, one of the monster cards you can play is called Swap or Switch. Remember, you're only playing up to one monster card per turn. In the standard game, you must use this card to switch, but you have two choices. One is you can switch the direction of play. Instead of it going clockwise as it starts, it would switch to go counterclockwise. Or players can switch their entire hand of cards. There are 5 cards. The player who played this card gets to decide which direction players are switching with, but essentially you're switching with the player to your left or your player to the right as chosen by this player. Now the player that played this card gets to first rearrange their hand with their table before they do that, but only the player that played this card gets to do that. So everyone's either going to be passing all their cards in their hand to the left or to the right and gaining cards from the other player next to them. Now once at least one card from all 7 of the unique monsters have been played in the monster row, then a player can play the Chef Blobby card, which will trigger the end of the game. And then all players take all the cards that's in their hand and place it face up in front of them, and then the player who played this can take one whole pizza. Again, any combination of cards from any and all players up to one whole pizza and eat it. And the player who played this will, again, create and eat as many pizzas as they can, following the normal rules, and then that will be the end of the game. Then each player is going to look at the pizzas that they have eaten. Those are the ones that are off to the side face down, because that's where you place them as you ate them throughout the game. And you're going to flip them over and see what kind of pizza they are. And then you're going to write down the amount of monster units that pizza is worth, as shown here in the pizza menu prices in the rules. And the monster unit amounts for each pizza type are at the top of your guest check for reference. Then you're simply going to tally it up, and then that is your total of monster units. Whoever has the most is the winner. And if it's a tie, the youngest player in the tie wins. An interesting note on the menu prices, which are in monster units, you can see there are certain shortcuts you can take when tallying different pizza totals. For example, a cheese and supreme together add up to exactly 20, as well as a pepperoni and veggie together. This adds another layer of depth and learning to the game. If everyone's already played the game before, you can play with the tax and tip advanced play. You shuffle all these cards up and you give one to each player. The player can look at it, but they keep it secret to the end of the game. Now, if you're playing with this variant, there is one more rule when you're playing the Swap or Switch monster card. You can choose to swap your tax and tip card with another player, or you can swap it with the top of the draw deck that was off to the side that was not used. Then at the end of the game, everyone's going to flip theirs up. Once you get to your subtotal as normal, you'll then find out what the tax and the tip is by putting those amounts here. For example, this one here says a percent tip. Well, it's 15% of $49.25. We have $7.39. And here we have 5% tax. So you do 5% of $49.25 and you place that here. And then you add it up and you have your total monster units. And all players will decide whether to round up or down at the beginning of the game. I also want to point out to take a look at the flyer in the box, because you could win a $5,000 scholarship and you can get 3 free games that you can play with Blobby's Pizza. Well, I hope this helped you dive right into Blobby's Pizza. Now, if you have further questions about the rules, I've placed a link below me in the description of this video, and that's the best place to ask them since I'll be notified, but so also will Semper Smart Games.